The best ball playoffs are so close. They're so close. We've almost made it. It feels like just yesterday we were drafting teams around the clock talking about these playoffs. Week 17, week 15, week 16. Who has good matchups? Who doesn't? Who has upside for the playoffs? Who can win you? Who's the guy you need? I brought on Silas Jackson today. We're going to try to start to talk through, when you look at your best ball teams that are advancing, which are the ones that have the players that you really think you need. We're going to try to identify some of those players, games, maybe some guys who might be popular that maybe you don't want on your teams. We're going to talk through all of that today and more here on Spike Week. All right, Silas. Glad to be back with you. We haven't done a show in a little while, but I'm very excited now. I'm curious in your take on this. We'll get into all the playoffs and all that kind of stuff. I'm curious on your take on this. I am both simultaneously excited because the playoffs are almost here, right? Everybody has, if you draft in volume like we do, you have teams making it through. You have some teams you're excited about, whatever. But like, I'm also excited to get the hell out of this just hellscape of a regular season with all of these injuries. Like, I just want to get to the money weeks. I know I'm going to have dead teams. I have so many dead teams. You know, I look back and think about all those 45-minute sessions I spent drafting these teams that are just, you know, I just pissed away that $20, $25, $5, whatever it was. But I'm just so excited to get to the actual part that, you know, where all the money is won, and having you on to start to think about, like, we're excited about everybody gets excited about teams that are like scoring the most points, right? Or in first or whatever. But those aren't always the teams that when we get there that like do the most damage. So I think starting to think through that is like, I'm excited for all that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm excited to see, like, be able to go through a little bit of the teams, like, and actually see which ones are actually live and which ones are dead.
Yeah.
You know, I've been trying to monitor it, but, you know, where week 7, it literally doesn't matter. Like, we're getting into like the last 2 weeks of the regular season. Like, you can actually figure out, all right, this team needs to overcome what to actually make it through and actually have a chance. You know, I've seen my my current winnings go down, which is not necessarily a bad thing because, you know, some of those dead teams got out to early starts. You know, I have a lot of cow pits. Who cares?
Yeah.
But no,
you and me both.
Definitely excited, especially on DraftKings, because I think I have a pretty good advance rate on DraftKings, but going through and actually seeing those teams is impossible without our tool.
Yeah.
But I haven't been able to update it. So looking forward to that.
Yeah. It is funny. Last year, I was really not very good on DraftKings, to be totally honest with you. I had a totally average advance rate, like somewhere around the absolute, you know, average of randomness. And on Underdog, I had a really strong advance rate, and I had a bunch of teams. Like, I had one in particular big dog team that I landed on basically all of the nuts. Mm-hmm. Andrews, Debo, JT, Cup, everybody, right? It didn't have Chase, so I wasn't going to win the big dog. But I got knocked out in week 16, I think by a fellow Spike Weeker. I can't remember who it was. I apologize for not remembering. We talked about it a lot that week. So if you're here, please pop in and tell me, hey, you can dunk on me. But it was, if you recall, funny because they're playing tonight, Isaiah McKenzie. Remember the big Isaiah McKenzie game, the 3 touchdown or whatever Isaiah McKenzie game? It's in the same week, that week 16, Byron Pringle had his monster game.
Oh yeah.
I was winning that. I was going to move on to the championship. Again, I wasn't going to win. So like, whatever, who cares? Why are you telling this story? But it's like, these are all these crazy things that happen in this time of the year where it's like, I had the nuts. Like, I didn't have Chase, so it didn't matter. But I think I had Penny on that team too. I had the nuts. And I lose to Isaiah McKenzie and Byron Pringle, which are on a big dog team. Like, they didn't even get drafted in like BBM teams. If everybody remembers the sickos that have been doing this like we have for 2 years, big dog teams were 20 rounds and BBM teams were 18 rounds on Underdog last year. And I lost to probably this dude's 19th and 20th round picks of these, you know, 5th string wide receivers on these good offenses. But that's like, that's like the fun of this time of year, right? Like Rashad Penny, people, it's revisionist history. Rashad Penny, and I mean Amon-Ra, obviously, but Rashad Penny was not a thing all of last year.
Everyone was calling him a major bust.
Yeah.
They were like, this was a wasted pick.
he got hurt right away. He did the Rashad Penny.
Yep.
He got hurt on like he actually, I think he started off the first game that he played, came in and like popped off like 3 big runs, and then but like hammy or whatever, goes down, is done for like the whole season. But then he's the guy, the guy you need is this dude who didn't play all year.
Yep.
Right. And so it's so fascinating to get to this point and be like, okay, let's take a step back, which is what we're going to do here today. And you have some particularly a fun list of some players we can start to walk through, and we'll walk through some of these games. But we spend all summer talking about these games, right? Whether we're not necessarily, it's a pet peeve of mine. People are probably going to get sick of me talking about it. We're not necessarily in the offseason saying these are the games I want to target because they're going to be the highest scoring, right? Bills, Bengals, or I mean, look at the LA Bowl now. The Chargers Rams looks like if you drafted for that game, you look so foolish. You know what I mean? Kupp is dead. Allen Robinson's dead. The Rams are dead. Mike Williams is hurt. Keenan hasn't done anything. Everett hasn't done anything. You didn't want to target that game, but that's why we don't target games. We don't pick out of the schedule and say that game I want to go nuts on. We just say when I do draft Cooper Kupp, I can take Gerald Everett as my tight end too, right? I'm going to take Gerald Everett over Hunter Henry on that team because that fits. But what you mentioned, you kind of did a little bit of research. If you had to pick one thing so far right now, as we're 2 weeks away, 1.5 weeks away from the best ball playoffs, what's like the first thing that stuck out to you that you feel like, holy cow, I want this. Like I want these guys on my team, or I want this game on my team, or just some spotlight thing that stuck out to you the most?
Well, week 17 obviously is going to be Bills Bengals. We kind of picked that out. That game could absolutely go nuclear. Like, Bills are getting healthier on defense, but if both teams are going to be, they're going to be in the fight for the first seed potentially.
Mm-hmm.
They need to overcome the Chiefs. They're not going to be wrestling anybody, so they might absolutely just blow everybody up. Otherwise, it's the Bears. I mean, their playoff schedule looks like absolute a cakewalk. They have the Eagles, which is a tough defense, but Eagles can put up points, which means you're getting Justin Fields in a positive game script or a negative game script. Then you have the Bills, again, same thing. So, second half, you're going to get those all of those Justin Field teams coming through. And then Lions last week, and we know how terrible the Lions are in terms of their defense.
Yes. Yeah. The Bears are such a fun. Oh, this is the bye week. Ignore me as I pull up the bye. I will say, maybe this was meant to be the misclick that was meant to be. This week, not super worried about it. Although Donta Foreman is low key, has been huge for me on a lot of teams, and I do have a lot of Cardinals. So this bye week 13 is actually kind of not very good for me. Lots of Kyler Hollywood and lots of Donta Foreman. Not necessarily like a mass quantity of Donta Foreman teams, but he's been so good for where you took him at that, he's really helping a lot of teams. So I'll be interested to see if my advance rate can crater even more in week 13. But in week 14, we have 6 teams on bye, which is kind of crazy when you think about this sweat that we have going forward. You're heading into the last week and you're like, okay, my advance rate is XYZ or whatever, or I'm really excited about these teams. But maybe you have some teams that are 10 points ahead, 20 points ahead, even 30, 40 points ahead, but they're Fields, right? So you see here, Chicago, Fields, one of the most impactful players in fantasy. Maybe Fields is on that team. Maybe you've been really loving those Christian Watson games for the last month. He's on a bye. Maybe you have a sneaky JT team, right? Well, he's on bye in week 14. It's kind of crazy, the shakeup that I think could happen over the course of these next 2 weeks. But to your point, as I pull up what I actually wanted to pull up with the playoff schedule, I totally agree. The Bears thing is the one that jumped out to me the most, where it's not necessarily that I'm excited for Justin Fields and the Bears. Obviously, without Darnell Mooney now is going to hurt their offense and hurt Justin Fields too. But the opposition, the Bears defense is atrocious. Like, we know that the Lions defense is who we want to target. The Bears might be borderline surpassing them. They lost Eddie Jackson now this week. They are just horrendous on defense. And so when you look here on the old Chicago line, they just so happen to face two of the top 5 offenses in the NFL in the first 2 weeks, right? So you want to get that Josh Allen stack to the finals. Well, he's probably going to score some fucking points in week 16 against the Bears. You know what I mean? Or, like, I don't know, maybe you have Devin Singletary sitting on a team and you're like, he's been fine, but not amazing. Maybe we get that Devin Singletary-esque run down the stretch here that we saw. Remember last year? He was like a guy that you almost not needed, but you definitely wanted Devin Singletary on your team. And it kind of all stems from the Bears, oddly enough.
Well, think about how much of an early lead Buffalo should get out to in that game. All of those teams that have James Cook in the 115, 120 range,
good point.
He might literally smash the second half. Like, he could have 115 yards and a touchdown easily.
If you took James Cook, you feel awful about the run out for the whole year. But seriously,
no, absolutely.
The crazy thing about, again, like the Rashad Penny example. I'm not wishing I have a lot more Devin Singletary than I have James Cook, and Devin Singletary's on a lot of good teams. I'm not wishing ill on him. Quite the opposite. However, last year on a decent offense, this is how Rashad Penny got there. If something happens to Devin Singletary in the next 3 weeks, James Cook could absolutely be that guy.
Yep.
And, like, those are not things that we're projecting or whatever, but those are all the crazy thoughts that go through my sicko brain over the course of this, this final month, where we're like, we think we know so much, right? Josh Jacobs. God, I'm so fucking sick of talking about Josh Jacobs, but it's like, he feels like that's the guy, right? That's the guy you need. He fell if you were in a spike week or a ship chasing draft or something, the dude would fall so far. He's just an absolute stone cold smash. He's the MVP of best ball right now. But if Devin Singletary were, like, something were to happen, just like the Rashad Penny thing last year, it's like, I don't know, do I want to be the only team with James Cook, or do I want to be one of the 10 million teams with Josh Jacobs? Give me the James Cook side. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. I'm like, I pretty much stone cold fade Josh Jacobs. So, like, seeing my advance rates, I'm like, that sucks. Yep. But going into the playoffs, you have significant leverage over everybody else. If Josh Jacobs puts up a stinker, guess who else? You're very easily flying up the leaderboard, and that's all you really want. So, all you need to do is get those teams through, because, week 17, you don't want the players that have, you guys have brought up. You don't want the players that are massively owned. You want leverage on that field because you want to win $2 million. You're not trying to win $35.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, very, very true. That's why, like, this literally the theme of the show, and probably most of the content we're going to do for the next 2 weeks here, is centered around a lot of this. Some of it's probably crazy, right? I just mentioned Devin Singletary getting hurt. I'm obviously not predicting that or whatever, but that chaos, it's going to happen. I have no idea who's going to get hurt. I have no idea what's going to change, who's going to get benched, which teams are going to tank. I don't know any of that. But something is going to happen, a la Rashad Penny, Amon-Ra, right? They're Swift, and, like, Amon-Ra is an absolute freaking stud. He was going to be good down the stretch regardless. But we can't pretend that Swift and Hawk and these other guys being out didn't matter at least a little bit, right? Absolutely. I mean, it of course matters. That's going to happen somewhere. I have no freaking idea where, but it's going to happen somewhere. And that we're going to get to week 15, 16, 17, and we're going to be like, holy shit, James Cook, right? That's just the example we've just so happened to have used here today. James Cook looks like a shitty pick, right? If you use your typical fantasy football standards for, right, did he outperform his ADP, whatever the hell that means. I still don't even really, I haven't come up with what that means.
Best ball.
Yeah. Yes. Hey. Yeah. Exactly. Like, hey, better in best ball. Whatever. There's going to be guys that look like useless picks throughout the course of the entire season, that are going to come to the playoffs, and you're like, thank God I got that dude through. And James Cook's just the first example that we came up with here. On the flip side, I do want to talk about Josh Jacobs really quickly, because like you, I did not draft a lot of Josh Jacobs. Shocker. I still think it goes back to making fun of Davis for drafting Josh Jacobs on, like, what the fuck does it was a what the fuck does James White do for this team? But I believe Josh Jacobs was on that team that Davis drafted.
Yep.
But if you look here on this playoff schedule down here with Vegas, he's been awesome. And so we could argue he's matchup proof, but I don't really think that's the case. A lot of his big games have come in plus matchups, or at worst matchups that were, like he had a big game against the Broncos, which wasn't necessarily a plus matchup, but they are more of a run funnel, and Russ and the offense is so bad, it's not like he can get game scripted out. But they play the Patriots in week 15. Not a good matchup. Can he be okay through volume? Sure. But you're not like, oh, yes, I got like you're not playing Josh Jacobs in DFS against the Patriots. That's how if anybody is listening and plays DFS, that's how I like to think about a lot of these things.
Yep.
You get to week 15. Are you playing Josh Jacobs, at 8K in DFS? Absolutely not against the Patriots. You're sure as shit not playing him. Yeah. He keeps burying me every single week. The OT touchdown run cost me so much money that maybe I'm just still bitter about Josh Jacobs, but that's okay. But then you get to week 16, and it's the Steelers. A good run. They got TJ Watt back. They're trying to win. The defense, you're not, again, same thing. If I'm thinking about it from a DFS perspective, we get to week 16. Am I playing Josh Jacobs in DFS? Fuck no, I'm not playing Josh Jacobs. Week 17, arguably the worst matchup in the NFL. You can't run on the Niners. Nobody can run on the Niners. They're going to be playing, I assume they're going to be playing, balls out, whether it's for the division or, place, moving up in their placing, getting a home playoff game or something. He doesn't have any good matchups down the stretch. So solace for the gups like me and you that didn't draft him during the season is like, well, theoretically, if he's really highly owned in our playoff weeks, this is a perfect time to not have him. Now, do I wish I had him because he helped my teams advance? Of course. But if you don't have him, it's kind of this situation where everybody's like, oh my God, Josh Jacobs. But you get to the playoffs, and it might be the total opposite. You're like, please God, I don't want him. Yeah, I don't want him.
Exactly.
And I got leverage on, I have James Cook, or I have Devin Singletary, or I have, somebody, name anybody against the Bears, right? I have Miles Sanders will probably be fairly popular, but I have Miles Sanders. I have Devin Singletary, right? I have, these different guys that are, playing in really, really plus matchups.
Yeah. And the way I like to think about Josh Jacobs is like, he's on, I think, 72% of first place teams right now. If I saw that stat correct, right? If that's correct, if you're in a 10-person round in week 15, 7 of those teams have Josh Jacobs. So his score literally does nothing for you.
But it's only negative. It can only be negative, right?
So if he has a good game, 7 other people, you have to was it 8 players? Your 7 other players need to outscore those 7 other guys. If he has a bad game, well, 3 people automatically have leverage off of you. So you don't want him moving forward. Like, the only way you want him is if he throws up an absolute stinker and somehow most teams get absolutely eliminated in after week 15. And then maybe you have the leverage of, oh, he was absolutely sick this year in week 16 and 17, but so many teams have him that it won't even matter. Like, they're going to get through regardless.
100%. The other, super fascinating thing about him is I like this. Terrence asks, who do you wish you had? So think that whole leverage through. The most direct leverage is like in DFS, Josh Jacobs is 7K and 50% owned, and there's whatever Joe Mixon at 7K. I play Joe Mixon at 5% owned over the super popular guy. Was there anyone that you can? He had a really wide range where he would go. So anywhere from, I'm just going to throw out the 6th to the 10th round or whatever, that might be a little less owned. Was there anyone that maybe popped out to you? I know you have a list of like some different guys that you were interested in.
I mean, just off the top of my head, one guy that interests me is Sky Moore, who's done literally nothing this year. He's he went in that like 70 to 90 range. But his target per route run is off the chart. He's a rookie, second half bump. If he starts to see the field more in a Patrick Mahomes offense, like he could be your differentiator right then and there. Because most of the teams that drafted Sky Moore are probably dead.
Yes. But it makes me sick. It makes me sick because the whole Sky, shout out to our good friends at Ship Chasing with the Sky Moore stuff. But his steam was so funny. He was one of the guys that I kind of jotted down as well as like, dude, if there's like an Amon-Ra situation, he's in that. He's absolutely in that bucket. And when you look at KC's playoff schedule, so let's just say for the sake of a thought experiment, Tony, the hamstring is dust for Tony. Let's just use that example. And Sky keeps earning more work because he is right now. He's earning. He needs to stop goddamn fumbling. He would probably be earning a lot.
The damn punt team. That's what they.
Yeah, my lord, can this dude hold on to the football, please? He would probably be earning so much more work. The Sky Moore bros would definitely be, enjoying it more if he would stop fumbling. He's the Melvin. He's the young Melvin Gordon of wide receivers. Like, please, Lord, you wouldn't get cut if you would hold on to the football. But the Chiefs are also like this combo. Why Sky Moore is this conversation is, dude, you look at this Chiefs schedule, the freaking Texans, who is like, I mean, the Chiefs will name their score in week 15. They will, like, however many points Mahomes wants to score, whenever they want to take the foot off the gas is up to them. They will score as many points as they want. So people be like, oh, what about the blowout? Maybe it is a Pacheco week. Maybe it is a Rojo, Melvin Gordon. I don't know. Maybe it's one of those guys that week. But they're going to throw as long as they're, it's within 21, 28, something like that. So they're going to name their score if he does kind of ascend. And what better situation to like they need these dudes for the playoffs, right? They're thinking Super Bowl. Yeah. So like what better game to have Sky Moore start to take a little bit of a step? Maybe now let's get him out there on 70% of routes.
Yeah.
And like the next thing you know, you get a 6 for 102 from Sky Moore against the Texans in week 15. And you're the only team that has him. You move on to week 16. Now, the Broncos are not an amazing matchup, and the game environment is certainly not what we thought it was going to be.
Seattle.
Right. No, so, but I'm saying in week 17, you're probably like, whatever against the Broncos. But in week 16 against Seattle, you feel just as good. You get that Sky Moore game in week 15, moves over to week 16 against Seattle, because Seattle's also going to push back. That game is like the game nobody penciled in as, oh man, I can't wait for that one. But right now, if you got Chiefs and Seahawks in week 16, like if you were, I know Updog, who is in the chat, was targeting a lot of week 16 games, and as was Awesemo. If anybody plays DFS, Awesemo, Alex Baker wrote a piece about targeting week 16. If you're targeting week 16 like correlations, and you have Ken Walker and Sky Moore or something like that, these are like Ken Walker's obviously a little more chalky piece, or maybe you have DK Metcalf, right? Yep. And you have Sky Moore, and that game shoots out. The next thing you know, you got awesome pieces into week 17 that absolutely no one else has. And I think those are the fun conversations. Like, we could sit here and talk about Josh Jacobs for 45 minutes, but like, that's not really very fun. Like, everybody can do that, right? Josh Jacobs smashed, Ken Walker smashed, Ramondre smashed, Travis Kelce smashed. Like, cool, we get it. Everybody's going to have those guys. But how do we win? Like, I want to win $2 million. You know what I mean? And Josh Jacobs and those guys are not really doing it for me. Do I want them on my teams? Sure. But the Sky Moores and such of the world are the ones that's like, man, that's a path. That's a real path that if I sneak a Sky Moore team in, that he could absolutely blow up the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, and one, so just from you talking, like I thought about the fact of, Mark Andrews absolutely smashed last year, right? Like he absolutely smashed his draft price. When I reverse engineered the perfect team from BBM2, he wasn't even on it. Like,
I know.
You didn't want his score. Like it just didn't help you advance. You needed Jamar Chase. You needed Damian Harris. You needed Debo. Like, you needed the wide receivers. You needed some of the running backs who were a little bit cheaper, but you needed the spike weeks in specific weeks, right? You needed Rob Gronkowski because he smashed in the early portion, was absolutely nowhere in the middle of the heart of the year. He advanced at a lower rate than expected, but he outscored Andrews in the championship week. He would have been the reason why you would have won. Evan Ingram. Who the hell wanted Evan Ingram last year? But he managed to get on that team. When I looked through everything in that round, to be just based off ADP, Evan Ingram was the guy who got you through in week 16. Like, how? You wouldn't have thought that. Like, it's these small tier guys that, provide you just a little bit more than anybody else. That give you that 0.0001 percentile outcome. This is a 236,000 entry contest.
Yeah. But that's what you need, right? And I also love, so it's so hard to, I'm a natural kind of trying to think about these things differently to see what kind of edges we can pull about. And I don't have a specific takeaway, but my main takeaway for the last 2 years of best ball has really been kind of what you wrote about in that article. If anyone has not read that article, I'm definitely going to make sure Silas writes it again because it was legit awesome. But he said he reverse engineered kind of if you could draft the perfect best ball mania team. And there was stuff in there. Like he said, Mark Andrews is the guy that everybody dreams about last year. You're like, oh my God, you didn't draft Mark Andrews at the 5-6 turn. You're an idiot. You needed him to win or whatever. But when Silas went back through, and again, you have to layer, right? You layer in the weeks, you account for ADP, and he didn't actually end up, if you wanted the optimal best ball mania team, Mark Andrews did not end up on it. And Evan Ingram did. What anyone, right? You go back to typical fantasy football, like season long analysis. Nobody is like, oh yeah, Evan Ingram, dude. Great pick. Awesome pick. No one even remember. Like Evan Ingram's like it's such an afterthought from last year, and everybody probably is like, "Oh my God, you drafted Evan Ingram? Awful pick." But in reality, he turns out to be optimal because best ball. Again, back to what my real takeaway is. It's so different. These playoff weeks change everything. You don't have right. If you had Andrews in your 12-team season long league, it's like yeah, of course. Absolutely. You can win your season. You probably did win your season long league with Mark Andrews, but in best ball, it doesn't work that way. It's not the same. And I don't have, like I said, I don't have a specific takeaway of here's what we need to do next year to account for that. But I know it to be true. And you wrote about it. And it's like, I want to find those guys. You know what I mean? We talked about Sky, we talked about Singletary and James Cook and stuff. But those are the guys that are going to be the difference makers that even you and I will sit here for an hour and talk about this, and we probably won't find half of them. But they exist. They're out there, and they're not the guys that you think.
Yep. Just thinking off that. I mean, Hugh gave teams. They're not dead. They're not dead. They're not looking good, but they're not dead.
Gabe is a fun one, and then I'll let you go. But he's a perfect example of a guy I'm biased, so please, I will admit to it. He is a guy I want to have on my teams in the playoffs because he can be the guy absolutely any week. You get that. I forget which game it was that he catches the 98-yard touchdown. He does the wide receiver Rojo. He just goes nuts on limited volume with the Bills that we just talked about how exciting the Bills are. I mean, he can be that guy, and he's not going to be. I mean, Gabe is in this weird spot where he was in it just a total dead range, right? It's like A-Rob and Cooks and McLaurin and those guys. So I think his advance rate will be probably a little higher than maybe people expect, but it's only because everybody else sucked and he put up a couple good weeks. But I want him. He's the exact kind of guy, right? Sky Moore, MVS also on the Chiefs. I want all those guys. I want them on my teams. Even though, again, if you drafted Gabe in your 12-team home league, you're like awful. He sucked. I started him every week. He got me 2 good games and a bunch of shit, and I lost a lot. But in best ball, those actually end up being the guys that I really want because he can pop for 30 plus literally any given week. Will he? I don't know. I'm not betting on it, but if it happens, he's the kind of archetype of a guy I want on my teams.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about that like all off season. Like we were drafting specific archetype types of players, and I found it funny when you were like, yeah, I'm biased. Yeah, of course you're biased. Like every team that every other team that advances for you probably has Gabe Davis.
Probably.
But no, same archetype type player. Deshaun Watson's back. Well, why not DPJ?
Great call.
Why not DPJ? He was there in the 16th, 17th round. Like, he's been fine. He hasn't given you any of those boom games with Brissett, but he's given you, probably some usable weeks, no spike weeks.
A lot of usable weeks. Tons of double-digit point games from DPJ, which is crazy. He hasn't had any of the 25 pointers, but he's had tons of 12. And you're like, what the fuck? Like, I drafted you for the 25, and I didn't get any of those. But he's been really, really helpful. He's like Curtis Samuel. Like him and like Curtis Samuel. Like I got a bunch of usable weeks from that guy. But different than Curtis Samuel, DPJ, like you said, especially with kind of the mystery box of Deshaun Watson heading into, it's so easy to make this parallel. It's kind of lazy, but it's okay. I like to take the low-hanging fruit. Will Fuller, DPJ and Will Fuller, like that's the parallel I would draw. Like if you had a low-owned, I don't know that DPJ is going to be low-owned, but he's not going to be crazy popular. If I have DPJ, and I can pipe dream about Will Fuller, Baltimore is a fine matchup. New Orleans is a fine matchup. And he gets Washington, which is like a neutral to plus matchup. A lot of good games. If Watson isn't shitty right after this long layoff, man, like DPJ is a great one.
No, and I mean, he could be shit the first couple of weeks, but it gives him a couple of weeks to, get into it. And then he might be able to unchuck the 65-yard pass to DPJ that Brissett just really can't do. They don't have to respect, they don't have to respect Watson running or anything down low. They can put two high safeties with Brissett and not have to worry about a big play.
Yes. And that's why Amari, let's talk about the Browns really quickly because they are kind of a fascinating team projecting forward into the playoffs. You have Watson. I am a lot more of a Watson skeptic, I think, than most people are. Not because, like, I don't think he has the upside. The mystery box, uncertainty is my thing. I love the uncertainty, aspect of just about any player, especially, he runs. He's been a big play guy, a high upside quarterback in the past. But I just think about it like, I'm not trying to compare, being a freaking best ball tout to an NFL quarterback. But, like, if I didn't draft a team for 2 years and then even on top of that, I couldn't like look at anything best ball related. And then the playoffs came around and I just had to hop back in and be like, yeah, listen to my advice, bro. I haven't done this shit in 2 years. And then I literally didn't watch a football game. I don't know anything. And the playoffs come around and you should listen to my advice. I would be awful. I wouldn't know what the fuck I was talking about. It's like, again, sorry, I'm a DFS bro. I came from DFS. So I use those parallels. It's like, for me, I'm not playing a lot of NBA DFS this year. I just like don't have the time for it. It's freaking, it feels like March NBA DFS, even though it's not even, the new year with all the injuries and everything. If I try to hop back in on any given day, I'm lost. I'm totally lost because I'm not following the day to day. There's so much nuance in all of that. Who's in, who's out, etc.
Yep.
I feel like that about Watson, but it also theoretically unlocks a ceiling for the Cleveland offense that we haven't seen yet. Jacoby Brissett has been a lot better than I thought he was going to be. But I think if I were to be excited about two guys on the Browns, it would definitely be DPJ and Nick Chubb. If I have Nick Chubb on a team, because he's going to be Nick Chubb. Watson can turn around and hand the ball off. I don't give a shit who's playing quarterback for Nick Chubb. But if he does elevate the offense, I mean, good Lord. He's been smashing with Baker and Brissett and all these losers at quarterback. If Watson is just a standard deviation better than them, holy shit, Nick Chubb is going to just go absolutely nuclear. So those two guys, I think, are really, really fun for the Browns. And I know, shout out like Eagles, we had a fun back and forth with like Nick Chubb and stuff in the offseason. He's really high on Nick Chubb. He should be excited, and everyone that drafted Nick Chubb, I think, should be excited. And the matchups are not perfect, but I'm not sure that it matters for him. I'm really not sure it matters.
He's the best pure runner in the NFL. And, if Watson does elevate the offense, like he's going to have so many more high value touches than he would have with a Jacoby Brissett offense. Like he could fall in the end zone twice a game every week from now on. And I would not be surprised.
No, absolutely.
But then he also has the breakaway speed to break one. And then, on the flip side, this goes back to someone in the Josh Jacobs tier. What about Kareem Hunt, who's done literally nothing for anybody? What happens if Chubb somehow goes down?
Nuclear. You want Kareem? Perfect example of the guy who was probably from a tradition. Again, if you drafted Kareem Hunt in your home league, you might have cut him by now. Yeah. He's been useless. He's useless. Maybe you start him right in a pinch on bye week troubles or injury troubles or whatever, and he gets you his 8 to 10 points, and you're like, fine. But from a best ball perspective, he's been useless. Worthless. He hasn't provided. He hasn't provided a single good week for you all season. But he is, again, these contingency type bets, the contingency bets that have the upside, right? James Cook, Kareem Hunt, those kind of guys. If it just so happens that we just saw Samaje Perine go nuts. And it's just when you're a contingency bet on a good offense, you got 2 monster Perine weeks in a row, because in part because Perine got a little lucky with some receiving touchdowns, but then Mixon gets hurt, right? And even if he misses one game, it changes the whole landscape of best ball if Nick Chubb misses one game. And it's so hard to think about that, right? Because we draft for the whole season. We're looking at, again, Josh Jacobs. Ramondre has just been a stone cold smash. If you have Ramondre in your team, you use his score literally almost every single week this entire season, even when Harris has been healthy. But we're going to get to these weeks, and it's going to be anarchy, and someone like a Nick Chubb is going to miss. And when you have that guy and you drafted a good team around him, that's what takes you from a good team to holy shit, I can win $2 million. Yep.
That's why I took such a hard stand on Keontae Ingram.
Let's talk about the Cardinals. Let's talk about the Cardinals, because they're actually kind of fascinating. I want Cardinals on my team. I'm dreading the bye, of course, as I said, but I want Cardinals on my team. Again, we talked about this. You see them here at the top. They play Denver in week 15, which is generally a negative matchup, but Russ is so bad and the offense is so bad that the Cardinals are never going to get like scripted out of this game. They can still score some points. Then you get the Bucs in week 16, which is, again, let's call that neutral, maybe a neutral matchup. Not great, not bad, but the Bucs offense is so bad. Again, very, very similar to the Broncos, and the Bucs just lost Tristan Wirfs. Maybe we can talk about the Bucs right after this, where I have a lot of Rachaad White, and I've been hopeful for Rachaad White, although Lenny is back at practice this week. And Godwin's coming on. Mike Evans is the prayer yards king now. Brady's overthrown him by 5 yards on all these go routes. But the Bucs offense is so bad now, losing Tristan Wirfs, that it's like, theoretically, the Cardinals should be able to kind of control that game. And dude, James Conner is literally the opposite of a picture of health. At any moment, it could be practice, and James Conner, and James Conner, his body is held together with a pixie dust and a bubble gum. Like he's at any moment, and he's playing every snap, and Eno's gone. It's like your stand on Keontae Ingram was like one where, again, in season long, you cut him. Yeah. You cut him months ago. But in best ball, he's your RB7 or whatever on a 0 RB team, your RB5 on a team with good RBs. The next thing you know, he's Rashad Penny. Those kind of things can flip so fast. I'm really excited about the Cardinals. I also think, just to polish that up, the usage for both DeAndre Hopkins and Hollywood Brown this past week, no Zach Ertz, Rondale's hurt. The offense is Connor, AK, or the running back, and those two guys. So that's really fun if you have Kyler, Nuke, Hollywood, Connor, Ingram, because it ain't going nowhere else. AJ Green ain't earning targets, and Trey McBride is out there running wind sprints. Really short wind sprints, like 5 yard and sit down, but it's still wind sprints.
Hey, well, at least Zach Ertz could catch the ball and fall down. Like Trey McBride can't even do that. Come on.
I felt so like so for everyone that knows me and knows how I've drafted, this year has been horrible for injuries. Pitts is done now.
Cup's probably not coming back.
Cup is definitely not coming back. Javonte, Mooney wasn't like a big piece, but Mooney going down. All these Brees, all these injuries have been truly brutal to be. Trey Lance, obviously. Bateman. These are all guys that are like literally my kind of guys. Like it's the exact kind of guys that I want to draft, and they all go down. But then you get this Trey McBride thing without Zach Ertz, and I'm like, finally. And tight end's so bad. Tight end is I'm praying for tight end points on 80% of my rate. The non-Travis Kelce teams, you're like, please God, give me a tight end that can do something. And Trey McBride felt like, okay, thank God I got a guy, he's not going to be Travis Kelce, but as an 17 to 18th round pick, this should be helpful for me. He is fucking useless. This dude doesn't do anything. Yeah. But the flip side of that is like, man, Hollywood and Hopkins look like guys I really want to have on my teams. And I think just the weird nature of both of them, right? Hopkins missing the first 6 weeks to suspension, Hollywood missing the next 4 to 5 weeks with an injury, is keeping them both in check. Ownership wise, when we get to the playoffs, that the Cardinals are actually a team I'm very excited about.
The only thing I would be concerned about is we've seen the Cardinals put up points in terms of fantasy points, typically in the second half after they get literally blown out in the first, and their playoff matchups they're not going to get pushed. So you need them to really put their foot on the gas and keep their foot on their neck. And then, it also concerns me a little bit that they'll probably be out of the playoff hunt.
Yeah, that is true. I haven't looked since I haven't looked at the we'll just go to let's put a 538 maybe.
They're 4-8, so they basically can only go. They'd have to win out to go 9-8.
Okay. And they obviously have a bye. Let me share the let me share the playoff odds from 538 really quick. So to your point, when we scroll down a little bit and oh my God, we got to scroll really far to get to the Cardinals. Where the fuck are the Cardinals? Jesus Christ. Okay, 1%. So yes, but the Keontae thing is kind of fascinating for this. You get into the money weeks of best ball. If they're out, are they gonna the thesis of James Conner is like, look, now he's playing every snap.
Yeah.
Right. He's James Conner when Chase Edmonds got hurt last year. But like, if they're out of it in week 16, 17, why would they run Conner out there 95% of snaps? They could let Keontae cook.
See what they have in the rookie.
I like it. I haven't looked at this, so maybe we'll piggyback on this really quickly. Some teams. I don't want to necessarily look at these teams that are basically in here at the top, but maybe some of these like middle tier teams. The Bucks, who I mentioned, maybe we should talk a little bit about here. 71% to make the playoffs, but they're bad, and they're definitely going to be fighting down to the end. So this is like almost the inverse of the Cardinals, where they're definitely not dead, but they need every win they can get. They're being pushed by god awful teams like the Falcons and stuff, but they got to win, right? So what do you think that means for the Bucks, though? Like, are you excited about any Bucks? Is the fact that they're going to be trying to win better, or the fact that the offense is really bad? Is that clouding it enough, or how do you feel about the Bucks?
Well, I think they're definitely going to get in at lower advance rates, right? I think Brady is one of the worst advance rate players.
Yeah. Yes.
And we know at any given point, Brady could put up, a 35-point bomb. Like and he actually hasn't shown that he's been bad. For whatever reason, they've been killed with drops and just like I feel like they're penalized at a pretty heavy clip, which is killing their drives. But I did write Godwin. I'm super excited for Godwin. He missed the first 4 weeks of the season. He's had he's had those games where he drops the 20, 25 points. But he's becoming Brady's go-to guy again. And he could literally just push you through to the championship weeks through 15 through 17.
If anyone's going to pull, and I know he's not the same, like what we would think of as an archetype, he's not a rookie or whatever, but if anyone's going to pull like an Amon-Ra here down the stretch, Godwin's got to be on that list.
I'd say he's like similar to Cooper Kupp last year. Like he's going to be that consistent 20, 25 piece every single week. Like you're only hoping, like the only way he doesn't get there is if he's not catching touchdowns, which I would assume they're going to, because he loves him in the intermediate routes. Like he's going to be used in the red zone.
Definitely. The interesting thing about Godwin is this weird fit with the Bucs being so bad and not being able to protect Brady. If you watch any of the Bucs games, you don't necessarily have to watch, right? You can go back and look at kind of the box score and such, play-by-play, next-gen stats, whatever. It is every once in a while we're going to take a shot to Mike Evans, and Brady's going to overthrow him by 5 yards every time, or we're just going to throw 2-yard passes to Chris Godwin. Mm-hmm. He is getting so like Brady. It has no confidence in that offensive line. Why are Rachaad White and Lenny catching so many passes, and why is Chris Godwin catching so many passes? It's because those are the guys that fit what Brady has to do in order to move this offense down the field. It's like he can't sit back there for 5 seconds because he's going to get sacked because the offensive line is horrible, and it's only going to get worse without Tristan Wirfs. Yep. So what does that mean? Well, that means like 15 Chris Godwin targets. Maybe it's 10 catches for 75 yards, but if he punches in a touchdown or two, I'll take. You're goddamn right. I will take that at the ADP that was falling over the offseason because of his injury. Yep.
And I do watch some of the Bucs games because typically they're in prime time, which has been miserable. But like they have Godwin kind of running that rub road. He brings them in motion, kind of puts them into the slot, and he runs like an 8-yard crosser. He knows he's going to catch it. He puts it right on the money, and he falls down.
Yep.
And that's all you need. Like they just keep the chains moving.
This is a good point by Felix that it is fairly similar to the Steelers last year couldn't protect Ben, but they also couldn't run the ball. It really is. This is like almost a perfect parallel. It was like if you got to the playoffs and so it ended up being mostly Najee. Of course, it was Najee for Felix.
Yep.
Fucking won $1 million. I never want to hear it. Felix, I love you. I never want to hear complaining again about anything because you won $1 million last year. You're good for the rest of your life on best ball.
Because I think he just wasted it all. This year's Najee.
However many $1,000 he dumped into Najee, that he donated that back to the community. I do appreciate him because he and I drafted a team on stream this year, and we took Najee, and it's actually a really if you could dream up a really good Najee team, which is hard, you got to do some mental gymnastics to come up with a really good Najee team. We have a really good Najee team. No big deal. Just 16, just $16K donated back. But the parallel is really good, where it's like this team looks like if you take a step back, right? You're like, I don't want any of these guys. This offense is a mess. A lot of them were expensive. Again, similar to the Steelers last year. Deontay was expensive. Najee was expensive. Claypool was expensive, etc. But the volume and the way that they have to play offense now does set itself up, and the fact that they're playing for stuff. They're not a guarantee, right? They're only 71% to get into the playoffs. They're going to be going balls to the wall down the stretch here. And again, I think, I would certainly rather have Rachaad White than Leonard Fournette. But if something were to, if Lenny were to bounce back and become the every down player, which I really don't think is going to happen. But if it does, it's like, dude, Lenny could be Najee of last year, and Godwin could be, right, the Amon-Ra of last year. And it's like the Bucs are the team that, again, from a season-long perspective, you're like, nah. Yeah, was 2-3 turn Leonard Fournette a good decision? No, it wasn't. Was Godwin a good decision? No. Was Mike Evans? Definitely not. But in the playoffs,
doesn't matter.
those are guys. Again, the theme of the show. Who do I want on my teams that maybe doesn't seem like the guys you think you want on your teams? I think the Bucs fit into that category.
Yep.
Talk about you could finish that thought, and then I want to talk about, you mentioned kind of like you put together like a list of some guys you're really excited for, and it's headlined by a lot of rookie wide receivers. I want to talk about them after you polish up the Bucs.
I was gonna go to the next point anyway.
Perfect. We're mind melding. We're
exactly,
mind melding. Yeah,
exactly. So in the middle of that screen, the Jets, they've been absolutely dreadful, right? Their offense has been absolutely dreadful. They're somehow 7-4. They're in the middle of the playoff hunt. They just moved to an offense or a quarterback that looks semi-viable.
Holy shit, Mike White looked like unreal. He looked I was a hater. Sorry to cut you off, but we got to talk about Mike White for 2 seconds. I was a hater. I was like, look, they got to let Zach Wilson play. I know this is a donkey take for most people. It's like they took him number 2 overall. He's played like 12 games or something like that. It's like you gotta let him. Like, I know he sucks. Look, if I were a betting man, Zach Wilson's going to be out of the league in 3 years. Like, literally,
3?
I was going to
he might be out of the league at the end of the year.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe he'll be in the CFL or something like that. Do they allow Mormons in the CFL? I don't know. But anyway, he's going to be out of the league sooner rather than later, is my bet. Yep. But if you're the Jets, you're not winning the Super Bowl this year. They're good. They have a good roster, but they're not winning. I mean, they're not winning. They're not beating Mahomes and Josh Allen and these guys. But after seeing Mike White, I'm more than happy to hold my L. Maybe, Mike White is the type of quarterback that I love. He's the Bailey Zappi, where it's like nobody respected this dude. He came from the air raid, right? It's like it's a God damn it. I'm gonna get it. We're gonna cut this after this is over. But it was like, why did Mahomes not go number 1 overall? Because he came from like a shitty program and ran the air raid, and people are like, yeah, every Texas Tech quarterback, right? Cliff himself put up big passing numbers. Everybody does it, And so it's like, that Mahomes guy, no big deal. But like those guys work in modern football. Be accurate, get the ball out fast, make smart decisions. They work. And then they feed into what you're going to talk about, these wide receivers actually they have 2 like borderline star wide receivers and a third guy, Corey Davis, who's pretty fucking good. Like, they have talent everywhere. If they just have a dude like Mike White that can get him the ball, goddamn, I won all these Jets on my teams.
Yep. And so first thing I'll say one thing about Zach Wilson, like, he's just reminding me so much of Johnny Manziel, and he's going to be out of the league very, very quickly. God,
yeah, yes. Hopefully he doesn't go on a bender
he's that rich, cocky white kid that just is so entitled, and he's just going to find his way out of the league, and they're going to eat a bunch of money and whatever. But yeah, to your point, Mike White gets the football to Garrett Wilson. He's finding a way to get the football to Elijah Moore. Corey Davis was hurt last week. We'll see what happens this week. We'll see who's actually on the field. But they have 2 former first-round draft picks, wide receivers, and one that was drafted in the second round. Like, they could have a very competent offense. They have a good offensive line, a really good defense. That team is pushing for the playoffs. It's like the start of their era, right? So how can you go back to Zach Wilson after what Mike White showed? Like, I was under the same aspect. No. Like, why would you go away from Zach Wilson? He looked terrible. But after you see a performance like last week, and I get it was against a pretty bad team, but who cares? Like, if he can continue to get the football to the guys that are actually winning on the field, put the ball in your playmakers' hands. So Garrett Wilson's the start of it. Like, absolutely love him. Looking forward to having him in terms of any roster that advances. His target pro run is an elite rate. Like, he might be that Amon-Ra guy. Although I don't think he's going to be owned at a lower percent rate than we'd expect. I think he's going to be owned a little bit higher just because he boomed with
he's been
at the
good
beginning of the year. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Is he, if you had to say, okay, my Amon-Ra, is Garrett Wilson your kind of number one for that? Because I think he would be mine. We talked about Godwin, but like, rookie or young player kind of ascending here. I mean, Garrett Wilson's been awesome since the jump, but is he kind of your Amon-Ra number one, guy that you would rank in that list?
He's my favorite rookie just because he'll be on the field. Sky's pretty high up there. Olave is obviously smashed all year, so I think he's going to have a really high advance rate. But how can you not be excited for Chris Olave? Like, he's had the absolute nut outcome in terms of both Jarvis and MT got hurt, and Andy Dalton just wants to throw him the ball.
And I definitely have to hold the Chris Olave L. We did a show. Chip Chasing did a NFL draft live stream, and I hopped on that and I talked to. I'm a best ball bro. I'm a GPP bro. I'm all those stupid things, right? I like to get into the nuts and bolts of the game more so than getting my hand in the dirt. But what most people maybe don't know is like, I played college football. I coached high school football. I'm like a football lover. I grind college football DFS. I probably watch more college football even than I watch NFL. It's multiple days, so it's a little easier to watch it. There's more games. I mean, there's a lot more teams. So naturally you watch more. Olave was, I told Sean Siegel, he was like, what do you think like Olave is as like an NFL player? And I said, he's a really good football player, but he's a role player. Was basically my thesis of Chris. I'm like, he's fast as hell. He runs good routes. He's smart. He does all the things that you want as an NFL wide receiver, but like he doesn't have that like pure upside. Like Garrett Wilson did, in my opinion. Jameson Williams did. Drake London did. Olave was like, I want him on, if I have an NFL team, I want Chris Olave on my team. But it was more like we're gonna get Gabe Davis. We're gonna get the 6 or 7 targets. There's gonna be some deep shots. We're gonna get some big weeks, and we're gonna get some 2-catch weeks. He has totally proven that wrong. This dude is just good. He earns targets everywhere on the field. He's elite. He's really, really good. So I'm really happy you brought him up too. He's another good one. I want to pull up. I actually don't know the Saints schedule off the top of my head because they're kind of interesting too. So we get Atlanta, definitely a plus matchup for old Olave. Cleveland is a plus matchup. Philly is not necessarily a plus matchup, but let's say you get a Hurts, AJ Brown team or something into week 17. You have right. They score a bunch of points, or Miles Sanders or Goddard or Devonta Smith, and you have Olave with it. That is why you draft the week 17 correlation thing.
Absolutely.
Did anyone, when we were in June, did anyone say, "Oh baby, I can't wait for the Eagles Saints game in week 17"? No, absolutely not. But right now, if you have Jalen Hurts to AJ Brown with Chris Olave and you get it to week 17, that feels pretty good.
Yep. No, absolutely. Another rookie that's super interesting just because I think he's going to be super low owned. Treylon Burks. Like he's starting to look like AJ. He's starting to look like AJ Brown. Like they're getting him the ball all over the field. The man's like super electric. And it's just hilarious because his 80. I was all over him early, and then the lung issue pushed him down. Like, I don't
remember the asthma. Remember the oh my god, it is funny to look back now. Months. I mean, we're many months away from that. At the time, it was so funny and so silly, but it feels really silly now. Like Burks has been good to fine all year, but particularly this last week, damn, like. I would be very excited for Treylon Burks. And again, I have it highlighted here on the screen. Chargers, Houston, Dallas. And you have Treylon Burks in the 9th round or whatever. There's a Josh Jacobs pivot, different position. Yep. But if I drop Treylon, right, if you're an advance rate bro, would you rather have Josh Jacobs or Treylon Burks? Of course, Josh Jacobs. But if you get to the playoffs and you have a different running back and you have Treylon Burks, I would rather have the Treylon Burks side right now, 100%.
Absolutely. Well, and he's going to go against, people are going to be like, oh, well, he's going up against Trayvon Diggs. Well, Trayvon Diggs gave up the most yards in the NFL last year.
Yeah, that's a plus matchup. The only concern is the pass rush. The concern is not Diggs. Diggs is like I like Diggs. He plays a little bit like Andrew asked, what position did you play? I started at corner and I moved to safety. I moved to we played a cover two. I moved to safety my last 2 years of college, but I played corner. God damn it. Again, we're going to have to cut this because I'm not trying to make this comparison, but kind of like Trayvon Diggs, I would give up some big plays, but like I'm hunting picks and like I'm like, that's what Trayvon Diggs does. He's going to make I don't know this, so an EPA bro can come and dunk on me if I'm totally wrong, but like an EPA perspective, when you hunt interceptions, an interception and a pick six is like a massive play, right? From like an EPA perspective, that's what Trayvon Diggs does. He gives up a bunch of so his EPA is neutral, but it's so polarizing. He's a spike week defensive player, right? It's like he's going to make big plays, but he's going to give up a shit ton of big plays and a shit ton of catches because he's this really aggressive corner, which is fine actually for real life football, especially when you have Micah Parsons and all these guys rushing the passer. But that's a plus matchup. If you have Treylon Burks, like Treylon and CeeDee in week 17, CeeDee is another guy. Who the hell is going to have CeeDee? Like if you drafted CeeDee in that range of Kelsey and Diggs and Devontae and Eckler and AJ Brown and Tyreek and everyone else is better than CeeDee from like a season long perspective. But if I get to week 17 and I have Treylon Burks and CeeDee Lamb and this game that we didn't really love in the offseason, I would be very, very excited for Treylon Burks.
Yep. George Pickens is another one. He's moving into that alpha role. We'll kind of see how that rolls out. Kenny Pickett's obviously scary, but yeah. So pretty much every rookie in the NFL, I'm pretty super excited about.
So Wilson, let's run it down. Garrett Wilson.
Yep.
Olave, Treylon Burks. Sky?
If he gets on the field. Kenny Pickens. Or not Pickens, but not Kenny. George Pickens.
Kenny Pickens. I like it. That's a meld of Kenny Pickett and George Pickens. Yep.
Christian Watson. Right?
Yeah, Jesus. That dude, another big whiff. How much did you take a lot of Christian Watson? How was your Christian Watson exposure looking?
I don't think I did.
Neither did I. And it doesn't feel very good right now.
Honest.
What about Jameson Williams? Felix brings up Jameson.
I was about to bring up Jameson Williams. I'm super excited for Jameson Williams solely because I have a ton of Jameson Williams. So he's the guy that's literally gave me nothing all year. And I think if we were redrafting and he didn't get hurt, I think he would have been the number one wide receiver off the board.
Same.
I said that the whole time. Like he was just so good. I have 4% Christian Watson, so not great.
Any advancing teams though?
2 advancing out of the 4.
That works.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. But yeah, Jameson, we'll see how they incorporate him into the offense. I'm concerned that they kind of, they want to. Dan Campbell said that they want to get him on the field and give him some game reps, but I think they're just going to take it easy with him. They're not in playoff contention. They have nothing to play for. Like he might play week 17, 18 when he's playing against like second stringers. So like he might, if you get a team in week 17 that has him, like he could be the only guy out there that, scores 25 points because I think he's that good, and he might just dunk on, the second string talent in the NFL, but they're going to limit him. So I was hoping he'd already be playing by now.
What do you think about the Lions as a whole? So we obviously, you just talked about Jameson, but what do you think about Amon-Ra? Obviously Hawk is gone. That backfield is hilarious. DeAndre Swift is we've almost never seen anything like the DeAndre Swift efficiency, but the dude never plays. And then Jamal Williams gets all the one it's all the 1 yard touchdowns. I think it was Hayden again. Shout out Hayden Winks. Posted every single one of Jamal Williams. What does he have, 10 or 12 touchdowns or whatever it is now?
I think it's 12 now.
Posted all of his touchdowns, and like out of the 12, 10 of them are 1 yard touchdowns or something. He has like 2 touchdowns from outside of 5 yards out of all 12 of his touchdowns. Like everything is this dude is like, I wish I could sun run like Jamal Williams is sun running. Like my team is going to get to the 112 times in a season, and I'm going to punch it in. But what do you think about? Obviously, we're excited for Jameson, but there's a lot of opportunity on the Lions, and the Lions games. Obviously, I mean, we talked about the Jets, right? So like, Amon-Ra. I don't know if Jameson. We'll see about Jameson in Week 15. But Amon-Ra, Swift, Jamal Williams with Garrett Wilson and Elijah, that looks pretty fun. Carolina, please God, let me get a Donta Foreman to Week 16. Like that would be really, or DJ Moore or both. That would be really fun. And then we started this off the rip with the Bears. Dude, you get a Fields team with some Lions on the other side. That's really fun. What do you think about the Lions?
I'm interested in the Lions. The only thing is, like, how far can they go with Jared Goff, and how long are they going to let that experience go? Like, they're probably moving on from him this year, so I think they're going to try and get a little bit. They're going to get interesting in terms of what they do down the stretch. Like, I think they're going to give different people a little bit more playing time to kind of evaluate the roster, to see how much of a turnover they need to do, to see where, how close they are to playoff contention. So that would be my concern, like week 17, 18. I don't know who their backup quarterback is right now, but, potentially playing a backup quarterback. Amon-Ra is going to stay Amon-Ra. Like, he's going to get peppered with targets. He doesn't really go super far downfield. Like, he kind of plays that Godwin type role, so he's going to be fine. I don't have, so I have 7% Swift. I have 0 of them, 0 advancing. If I could somehow get a Swift team advancing, I'm kind of interested. Just because, like, he's finally off the injury report. Like, could they have been limiting him because he was still nursing that injury? Like, he's finally completely healthy. Will we see him get the goal line role? I don't think so. But, he has he's Tony Pollard now in that offense. Like, John Warner said that earlier on Badge Bros. I thought it was a great comparison. Like, they're using him in the passing game. They're using him down the field. They're kind of letting him kind of use that stretch run type ability to see and use and get those explosive plays. It's an interesting role, and he at any given point can put 25 to 30 points, which we saw at the beginning of the year. So we'll see. But yeah, I'd say Swift is definitely the most interesting.
I love that because he is, again, definitely a low advance rate player, right at the somewhere around the 1-2 turnish, middle of second round, something like that, and hasn't. Again, not to keep saying the same shit, but like from a season-long perspective, has not paid that off at all. But he's been good enough. This dude is just so efficient and so good at what he's good at. That's one of my favorite things about DeAndre Swift is everybody wants to be like, from a running back perspective, I want Le'Veon Bell. Everybody remembers old Le'Veon Bell on the Steelers. Like, get me grind between the tackles. Remember this stupid bullshit? Like, he's so patient, right? He's dancing around in the backfield before, and it's like a 3-yard carry. Like, it doesn't matter. But he catches a bunch of balls and he gets the goal line carries, whatever. But Swift is the antithesis of that. He is so good at what he's good at. But he's not Jamal Williams, where like when they need 1 yard, it's Jamal Williams, and that's fine. That's fine. It's like Green Bay. If you want 1 yard, give it to AJ Dillon. That dude has that.
He's gonna fall forward 100% of the time.
His thighs are bigger than my waist. Like, he's a monster. But Aaron Jones, at what he's good at, is unreal. And DeAndre Swift is like that. You want to run in between the tackles. He makes mistakes, right? If you watch Hard Knocks or you just watch the games, you're like, God damn it. Like he's really not a great in between the tackles runner.
Yeah.
But in the pass game, he's like CMC-esque.
Yep.
And in explosive type plays, right? Outside zone, different things. If he just gets work in those playoff weeks and you have DeAndre Swift, he's another one that I would be very, very like, would you rather have DeAndre Swift or Josh Jacobs in the playoffs? Again, it's another one. Like I would rather have DeAndre Swift. I know it's a second round versus 8th round or whatever, but those are the kind of compare, right? Because you're sitting on teams right now that you're like, they didn't score like 1 million points in the regular season, but like that doesn't mean that really doesn't mean much for the playoffs.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Any other? What about any? Did you jot down any non-wide receivers? Any running backs, tight ends, quarterbacks, or anything that you're particularly excited for?
We touched on Kyler. So Kyler is one of them. Trevor Lawrence.
Ooh, good one. Yes.
Just because you're starting to see that breakout. I think they're going to continue to expand the playbook, and his options are pretty good. Zay and Kirk have been reliable weapons for him.
God bless Zay. God bless Zay. My teams are so bad with all the injuries, and that Zay Jones week last week was so big. Anyway, carry on.
I think we could continue to see them rely on the passing game rather than they have. They've been pretty run centric. So I'm hoping to see them kind of open it up. I had DJ Moore, who's another wide receiver, just because Sam Darnold's now the quarterback and he's out of QB jail. Hopefully, knock on wood. Funny that we're like, just get him a quarterback, and he had Darnold.
We're back to Darnold,
yeah. I'm gonna not really touch on Chase, but Chase is obviously super exciting. George Kittle, that offense,
okay,
unreal. Like them trading for CMC is just like unfair to the rest of the world. They have playmakers at every single position. So it really interests me in Kittle because he's going to continually see like man-on-man single coverage on a linebacker, and we know Kittle can break off those 70, 75-yard runs.
Great call on Kittle, because especially the leverage at tight end is absurd. Obviously, if you had to dream up the optimal team, you have Kelsey. Yeah. Right. That's easy for everyone to say. But how do you get away from a Kelsey team with another high upside tight end? I think Kittle's maybe the best option out of all of them. I think off the top of my head, him.
It's definitely Kittle over Andrews, because Andrews has had the worst run out in terms of everybody on his team getting hurt. Like they can just put 2 people on Andrews, and that's why the Ravens haven't been as efficient as they were at the beginning of the year. Like,
yeah, it's terrible. Andrews was. It's so funny to do this show now and think back to where we were talking about it in week 6 or week 7 or whatever, because Andrews was like everyone was like, oh, you drafted Kyle Pitts over, and I'm not saying that you should have drafted Kyle Pitts over Andrews, but I'm saying everyone was like, oh, Andrews, what a smash. He did it last year. How did you fade him or whatever? And now I'm not mad about a team with Andrews on it, but like he's not a difference maker, really. I mean, he can still catch 2 touchdowns in a week, of course. But that offense, particularly that passing offense, is, I mean, when you don't have, he's a great example of an offense that can't be efficient passing, because I mean, Demarcus Robinson is like leading the wide receivers in targets. Like the Chiefs didn't want him.
They have the ghost of Deshaun Jackson running routes.
Yeah, they're throwing the ball to Deshaun Jackson. Like, what are we doing here? And so it's like, Devin Duvernay's fine, whatever, but they just don't have any weapons in the passing game, which means their one weapon, Mark Andrews, gets blanketed by the opposing defense. And even if he doesn't, they're not efficient enough as a collective on the offensive side to make him like a total smash. Can he be good and you want him? Sure. But he it's just so tough, right? The Chiefs are so good that Travis Kelce just can blow away the field every single week. And it's not even just because of Travis Kelce. It's that offense is so good with Mahomes and Andy Reid and everybody. But the Ravens are like the stone opposite of that. So you're just like, yeah, I'm fine with Mark Andrews. Can he be a guy that I want? Of course. But I like the Kittle thing because if I had my druthers and I had a team with an elite tight end, it would be Kittle over Andrews for me. I totally agree. The matchups are good too. Seattle, Washington, and Vegas, all teams that can push back enough. Washington is iffy, but all teams that can push back enough. And like you said, can Kittle, catch? He just caught 2 touchdowns, 2 weeks ago or whatever. Yeah. Can he do that in a meaningful week? Absolutely.
Well, and going back to the Andrews thing, like he just went in such a hard location all year. Like you're giving up your second round pick. So even if he gives you that elite upside, like you're not pairing it with what you can Kittle, right? So
yes,
that's the hard part. He had the absolute nut outcome. What happened last year? We talked about it all off season, which is why I came in underweight on Andrews. It was just he wasn't going to repeat that performance. Defenses were not going to allow him to repeat that performance.
I totally agree. As we start to wrap, I'm gonna put you on the spot. We talked about some of those wide receivers or whatever. Totally off the board. You're like some guy, not Garrett Wilson, not somebody like that, not Keontae, because we know you're excited about Keontae. Somebody else that is a guy that you're looking forward to in the playoffs. Like, holy shit, if this guy's on my team, I'm like, this team feels really live to me.
Chase Claypool.
Ooh, okay.
I'm super excited for Chase Claypool. They've already gotten him super involved the last 2 weeks. Darnell Mooney goes down. That team is probably playing from behind most weeks. We're going to get to see him be an alpha wide receiver. We'll see if he can do it, which, jury is not in right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm super excited to see it because I think the man can absolutely ball. And, when you add in that Fields is going to be running like a crazy person, like it might open up the fact that he might have single coverage.
Really, really like that call. You want to talk about a low advance rate player that could, have 102 in a playoff week. I think that's a really, really good one. We already outlined kind of some of the Bears' funny, difficult, it's a difficult schedule for them. They got to go play some of the best offenses in the NFL, and it looks like Fields will be back this week. And if he's still playing in the playoffs, I mean, even if he isn't, Chase Claypool without Darnell Mooney, I mean, you have to throw when you play the Bills and the Eagles, and you have to throw, and it has to go somewhere. And he's now the guy without Darnell Mooney. And again, he's the perfect example of a horrible pick, right? You never started Chase Claypool in your season-long league all year. Yeah, and again, you probably cut him. But you get to the best ball playoffs with Chase Claypool, there's upside. There's like a lot of upside, like legit lot of upside. As we wrap, I want to hear or see your best teams or the something you're excited about. What's a team you got going that you're pretty excited about? I'll pull something up too while I'm putting all the pressure on you while I pull it up. But I want to hear what something you got going that, it could of course be, a chalky answer, but something you're excited about heading into the playoffs here.
I have one team that I saw that was super exciting. I mean, I've had a team in the top 500 pretty much all year.
Yeah. I knew that.
Which has been super exciting. It's faulted off. I think I'm down to like 400th, but it's just been fun to kind of monitor that. But I believe, sorry, my computer's running super slow. There was a team drafted on May 18th, so I have to let me just start over. It's a Mahomes team with Mac Jones. So I'll start with that.
I like it. I'm intrigued.
Nick Chubb, CEH, which CEH sucks. Kenneth Walker, Ramondre, Keontae Ingram, Cooper Kupp if he somehow comes back, Tyreek Hill, Terry, Drake London, Mecole Hardman, Josh Palmer, David Bell, Pickens, DPJ, Hawkinson, and Alberto, which doesn't matter. But
fucking Alberto. God damn it. I'm mad his name even came up during the course of this whole thing because that dude is absolutely burying me. I like that. That is a fun team. I was gonna pull up. Hold on. Now I'm the one dragging. But people are asking for hyper fragile teams in the Discord. Which, if you're not in the Discord, there's a link in the description to hop in. It's 100% free. We are literally sickos talking about best ball and our teams and players looking forward around the clock. But I'm going to pull up a couple of that is so little. I'm going to pull up a couple of looks like my wife is home. A couple of hyper fragile teams that I'm excited about. And if anyone knows me, I'm much more of a zero RB guy, right? So it'd be really easy for me to pull up a Miles Sanders or Mondre team or whatever. That's my brand. But I think there's a lot of so your Cooper Kupp thing is what hit me when I said this. I'm not very optimistic about Cooper Kupp coming back, and so I'm not really that excited for this team. But I think there's a lot of fun in some different kind of builds heading into the playoffs. Like, so this team is a 4 running back team that just smashed the 4 running backs: Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley, Ramondre Stevenson, and Donta Foreman. It has Cooper Kupp, so I'm kind of ruining my own question. This is not the team I'm most excited for. I mean, if Cooper Kupp comes back, it will be the team I'm most excited for, but I'm not expecting that. But if you have something kind of like this that has a very small amount of running backs and Jesus Christ, my dogs are losing their shit. A small amount of running backs, and you see down here I have Dallas Goedert and Hunter Henry as my tight ends. So not the chalk, right? There's not Travis Kelce on the team. Of course, we're all excited for Travis Kelce, but I'm not looking to those teams. Let's just pretend for fun this team had Justin Jefferson, right? Like if you plug Justin Jefferson into this team, and it's a late round quarterback team where it's like Mac Jones, Daniel Jones, and Marcus Mariota, assuming Marcus Mariota continues to be the quarterback for the Falcons, those quarterbacks can get me there. Like, give me 20. One of you 3 schmucks get me 20 points throughout the course of the playoffs. My running backs, I know are going to be good. Chubb, Barkley, Ramondre, and Foreman. And then you get this mix of wide receivers, right? Kupp, again, let's assume it's Jefferson, Mike Williams, Gabe Davis, Drake London without Kyle Pitts, Treylon Burks, who you talked about, MVS. We talked about the Chiefs wide receivers. Kenny Galladay, let's throw him in the trash. David Bell, we didn't really talk too much about, but with Deshaun Watson, David Bell's continued to start to grow a little bit more of a role with the Browns. Tyquan Thornton, a flyer, but not like just the archetype I want to have on these teams with some tight ends that are maybe a little bit lower owned, right? You get the if Hunter Henry, if they count that Hunter Henry touchdown from Thanksgiving Day, in the playoffs, you get that. These are the kinds of teams I'm looking for as we head into the playoffs, where it's like, does it look like the absolute nuts? No, but these teams can be so live because it's a combination of really high upside, but maybe not the perfect blend of, Josh Jacobs isn't on this team, Travis Kelce isn't on this team, etc.
Yeah. Here, I got one that I quickly found. So let me,
if you want to share it. Yep.
And I snip it.
Perfect.
All right.
Yeah, just zoom it in.
Josh Allen, can you see that or no?
Yeah, zoom it in a little bit.
So Josh Allen and Goff. We already talked about Goff a little bit. Josh Allen, obviously, best quarterback in the NFL.
Ooh, Connor.
James Conner, Kenneth Walker, Ramondre Stevenson, smashes.
Oh, those running backs are
Darrell
fun.
Henderson, Khalil Herbert will be back by then. Chase Williams has been hurt. Sutton, who has been iffy. Elijah Moore, the ghost of Elijah Moore, hopefully. Brandon Ayuk, who's been a staple, and in that offense, can easily catch 2 touchdowns. Chase Claypool, I already talked about. Jamison Crowder, our boy Zay Jones, right? Romeo Doubs, that doesn't matter. TJ Hawkinson and Tyler Higbee. Those are the guys that literally can go off at any given week. I don't think Stafford's coming back, but so Higbee's probably dust because he's going to be dealing with Bryce Perkins. But
but Hawk is good. Hawk, exactly. You want Hawk right now, I think, on your teams.
So that one, I was just kind of scrolling through. That one's interesting because no one's dead.
I love the individual players that are on this team. Obviously, Josh Allen is whatever. James Conner, we spent a lot of time in the Discord talking about James Conner today. I'm not very excited about his general week-to-week upside. But if you're playing every snap and you're running back and you're going to be low owned, I totally get it. But the great thing about this with James Conner, Ken Walker, smash. Ramondre, smash. Darrell has outs to being the guy, and it sounds crazy, moving on to a new team in the middle of the season. He has outs, and Khalil Herbert 100% has outs to being the guy. And then it has the wide receivers that are if we were back in June or July, and it was you're advancing a Jamar Chase, Mike Williams, Cortland Sutton, Elijah Moore, Brandon Ayuk, Chase Claypool team to week 17, you'd be like, fuck yes. I want that. But they're all going to be super low owned.
Yep.
Just
somehow
because of
the team's 120 points ahead, so I think it's safe to advance. But if you gave me that group of wide receivers and didn't show me the team, I'd be there's no chance. The weeks wouldn't have overlapped. Mitchell and Sutton have been huge busts, and Mike Williams and Jamar Chase have been out for half the year.
Yeah, this is a really, really fun team. I love this team. This is way more live than the one I showed because I have dusty goddamn Cooper Cup. But these are the types of teams I think that's the whole point of this show is you look at it, it's is Josh Jacobs on there? No. Is Travis Kelce on there? No. Is whatever, right? The league winners, quote unquote league winners, are not on that team. But you get to the playoffs with a low-owned Jamar Chase, a low-owned Mike Williams, maybe a low-owned TJ Hawkinson, I'm not sure. Low-owned all these guys with a little bit of, right, Ramondre will be popular, Ken Walker be popular, but that's fine. You want to have good players just because you don't want to have only low-owned players. You want to have good players. What you just showed is the perfect team for what you should be excited about, even though it doesn't have what you think you should be excited about. If that sounds right, you think you should be excited about Josh Jacobs, Travis Kelce, etc. But the teams that can win $2 million or have the best chance to win $2 million are probably the team that you just showed.
Yep. 100% agree.
Before we get out of here, we're about to start working on a ton of playoff best ball. I'm going to task Silas with using his brain for some fun playoff best ball ideas. Underdog just dropped another playoff best ball contest, which I'm excited about. We're going to be doing some draft streams for that. Before we get out of here, any super quick playoff best ball ideas that you have off the top of your head, and then we'll get out of here.
Basically just pick a team, or just a very rough strategy, go crazy, right? Be different right now because some teams have terrible playoff odds and a lot's going to change because it's only week 13. So get off the board. Don't be afraid to take a stand on a specific team. I'm all in on the Bills. They're probably going to play all 4 games if they make the Super Bowl because they're not going to get the number 1 seed. So then just mix and match all NFC teams. Don't be afraid. Get different.
You're big Bills, huh?
I'm a huge Pats fan. I'm a huge Pats fan, but dude, the Bills are so good. They're just so good.
This is a painful time for you.
Oh,
as a Patriots
tonight's going to be worse.
Yeah, good point. Good point. In 2 hours, Silas will be not laughing as much as he is laughing right now when the Bills run in the Patriots. But we'll be back. I'm trying to work on a Discord draft schedule. Be on the lookout for that. We're going to hang out and do some drafts together, whether it's Battle Royale or playoff best ball drafts, whatever. Moving forward, we're going to start to do that and also be on the lookout for a lot of playoff best ball content. I'm starting to get excited. I'm starting to get the itch. I just want this actual regular season best ball to get over so I can stop looking at my Kyle Pitts and Trey Lance and Javonte Williams teams. And I want to have something else, to be excited for. So we're going to be diving into a ton of playoff best ball stuff. And of course, Silas will be along for the ride for all of that. But so for my goddamn dogs that are losing their shit over here, this is perfect timing to get out of here. And of course, for Silas, we will see you guys tomorrow or next week or very, very